Hi there. So I titled this Reindeer Games because I live in Alaska and I once lived in the city of North Pole for a time. It's nothing at all like that old Rankin Bass Rudolph cartoon. Maybe for the tourists, I don't know. I should be livid with anger, but I'm not. I have peace. I should be depressed, but I'm not. I have clarity, laughter, and joy. I've healed through a lot and I will continue to heal. This doesn't mean things are perfect. There are good days and bad. But my good days with regard to my mood, my self-belief, my faith, and my hope are better than they've ever been. My decision to separate myself from others in order to heal mentally, emotionally, and spiritually due to a series of truly bizarre occurrences was the best decision I've ever made. I am no longer angry with the people who targeted me for their gain. However, it is something I'll never forget, and there is still lingering disappointment. Now I have a degree of discernment. Some of those involved I once counted as friends, but I'm not in any way waiting for the apologies I'm owed. That's done. I am more calm. I'm more aware, not only of myself, but the behavior of others with regard to me. I'm not quite the same person I was 15 or even 5 years ago. And I'm slowly coming out of a self-imposed isolation that's lasted several years. I've learned more about being on the receiving end of ritual black magic than I ever wanted to know. I didn't learn this because I wanted to necessarily, but because I was experiencing it. This led me to learn about it on my own based on how I was being affected, but not, however, to return like for like, but instead for understanding and in order to neutralize it as much as I could for my own defense. My healing methods included a lot of prayer and meditative focus. It required a lot of spirit baths and a lot of patience with myself, and also because I lived with my 75-year-old mother. It required a lot of reflection to understand how my situation was connected to others, the patterns of those associations, and also what others gained as a result of their actions at my expense. The worst part is that it made it difficult to trust people in general, which I imagine it was intended to do. This can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I'm distrustful, I'll only run into those I cannot trust, and it will close me off to those whom I can trust. But my isolation did two things in particular. Number one, it made it easier for certain individuals to keep up their false narratives about me and subsequently add more to them. And two, it gave me the freedom to heal and to strengthen spiritually. I learned, and I'm still learning, to pay attention to my intuition. I know now that when things feel strange, chaotic, or dark for no apparent reason and without cause, it's not me, nor is it depression. It's something being projected towards me. Over time, I learned this felt a very specific way. And I had to learn or relearn the difference between what was mine, what were my energy, thoughts, and feelings, and what absolutely was not. I started connecting the dots and was first able to define what was happening to me between 2020 and 2021, but my life had been affected for longer than that, years longer. I had to really reflect and study every single relationship and experience I'd had going back at least 10 years. What I discovered were repeating mindsets and behavioral patterns in those around me. I like to think I was able to pick out who the puppet masters were or who their minions and supporters were, but it was like being in a weird loop, just the same ideas and types of people over and over and with the same agendas. I felt surrounded. I learned the hard way that these people I was around, they didn't have my best interests at heart, not even remotely. I'd have odd mishaps around the same people or groups. I had extended spurts of bad luck or weird luck with relationships, with an apartment, with neighbors, with my workplace, and even with my vehicle. And I started to realize that a lot of what I was going through was also being influenced or helped, quote unquote, by external parties. Was I responsible or accountable for my part in it? Of course I was. I'm human and I make mistakes. But my biggest lessons centered around self-worth, discernment, and knowing whom I could and could not trust. In this close-knit community, one group was aggressively going against any and everything I did, thought, shared, planned, created, or believed. It was as if they thought I didn't have the right to just be myself or learn and grow in my own way. They seemed to think I needed to be controlled. I'm learning now how not to share most of what I plan or things that I do. If I mentioned any of the bad luck to those around me, this brought up instant gaslighting, negation, mind games, and unknown to me at the time, spell work. All of these elements were all part of a plan, and they all worked in tandem. The deception was done so much and sometimes so subtly that I didn't notice the patterns at first. But it was done enough to have an eventual effect on my psyche. Getting away from particular people or groups showed me I wasn't the issue. I've learned that the effects of spell work build up over time, so eventually these things that I was experiencing caused me to feel edgy, sensitive, confused, doubtful, and off balance. They had effectively succeeded in affecting my self-confidence and also caused me trauma to boot, because anything that affects the psyche causes a form of trauma. This seemed to give them, my ops or opposition, more fuel. The decision was made to promote me as being mentally unfit and incompetent, which I've never been, when the real cause behind a lot of what was happening to me and adding to the confusion was literally a group of kitchen witches and their associates. They were very focused on me, on the art and music I created, who I dated, how I dressed, how I made money, and particularly how much money I made. And some of these were people I actually worked with. Their concerns were incredibly superficial. Money and appearances were not only their measure of success, but also what they chose to use as a weapon against me. They'd go so far as to blow out of proportion anything I did that they didn't agree with, or that put me in a favorable light, or they would just make passive-aggressive comments. But they even went so far as to create situations designed to make me appear a certain way. When I left corporate work due to burnout, one rumor was that I'd become some type of escort and was essentially sleeping around for money. No. There were ridiculous ideas that stemmed from some bizarre black woman down on her luck stereotype. They really wanted this to be my story, when it's not even a part of my middle-class military background. If they actually knew how I lived, they'd probably be really bored.